Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
All right. You're never it. No one's ever it. I'm it. I'm always
Hi,
it.
everybody.
Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter. I'm Sean. Over there is Rich Wave. There you go. Jazz hands. All right. And Mark over on the far end there.
Spirit fingers.
And just back from his tour with Springsteen in Europe. He came back to a rather divided audience here at home. The man, the myth, the legend, the K-Man.
Hi, everybody.
I thought you were going to say that he was on tour with Sparkle Motion, but that was...
No. Sparkle Motion hasn't been on tour in a long time. They broke up long ago, as you know.
I do.
Kelly, as one of the founding members, would be a motivating factor behind that. But I haven't found a way to motivate him to make those first efforts at bringing back the magic that was Sparkle Motion. I do want a shirt that is sparkly, that has the Sparkle Motion logo on it. I do want that, yes. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, even more than the I doubt your commitment to Sparkle Motion.
Now I know what to get you for your birthday.
Yeah. Yep. Well, boys, last time we spoke, we were hoping and praying that we were going to get satisfaction out of the last three of that Andor series. And we were saying, you know what, even if it doesn't happen, we've got what we've gotten, and that's amazing. So I wanted to find out what you think. Kelly, K-Man, sir, just back from your tour of Europe.
You know my general opinion of these things. And that doesn't apply here. I think Andor, the way it wrapped up, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I was locked in. Like I said, in the beginning, I felt like it was a little bit slow. But man, did it pick up steam, and towards the end, it just rode that all the way to the end. I seriously, I think it was one of the best things I've watched in a long time.
See, that's why I wanted to start with you, because we know the K-Man is extremely unforgiving. Extremely unforgiving, very difficult to satisfy.
Oh, very satisfying. Very.
Multiple times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
5
3
times
hours
in
felt
one
like
night
5 minutes.
Thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's cool. That is really good, because it's not often that we get that kind of feedback from you on that kind of stuff, you know.
And I look forward after this. I'm going to go watch Rogue One, just because now I'm.
Yeah, you hate everything.
Yeah, and you like everything. What of it?
So, Rich, before we get into details and stuff, what was your feeling on it? Your hot take.
Hot take. Well, we did our 2 years ago. We did our Andor's Great Fight Us video and reviewed it, and the whole world said, "Nah, Andor, slow, boring, blah 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 blah."
In relationship to our video?
No, in relationship to the series. No,
in relationship to them being stupid.
Nobody watches our video. We have our one fan, and they just watch you. But yes, they were incorrect, and we have now been vindicated, and now they're all coming around like, "Oh, we always knew it was great." My ass. You are all against this, and we stood firm. We stood like a tree at the river of truth, and we were vindicated, and it feels good to know that we were right and they were wrong. It really does feel good. The show gave me everything that I asked for. It did exactly what we said in the original video, which is it gave context and depth to the story of Andor and all the people involved in the rebellion, and took it from a place of, okay, there was an uprising against an evil empire, to give it such depth and such character and such performances that were excellent. I'm really impressed. And there you can keep, like Kelly said, he's going to go back and watch Rogue One. Now, when you watch Rogue One after watching this, you have so much more context, and you see, oh, this is how all these things develop. This is why Saw Gerrera is bananas. Aside from the fact that he huffs rocket vapor, which I think they maybe did a little change because originally it was said that his mask was a breathing apparatus, but I guess now it's a way for him to deliver those fumes to himself. But
can it be both?
I think it might probably is both. It is kind of keeping him alive just by poisoning him slowly. But no, it was excellent, and I'm glad that the rest of the world now recognizes this is what it takes. This is how great this property could be compared to Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and that awful. I don't even want to name it. It was so terrible. The Acolyte. You know, and even stuff like the Bad Batch, which apparently was pretty good, but it just didn't reach this level of Star Wars. This was the story for the rest of us that are now 50 years old and still love the property. So
yeah, this was it. I promised I was going to get the takes before I got into it. Mark, what about you, sir?
Okay, let's start off. I loved it. So one of the things that I have not been a fan of with Star Wars in general, right? So going back to this 1977, you get the cantina scene, is we have felt the need to give every alien in there a name and a backstory, and the comics have run off and the novels and all of these things. Like there's this desire to fill in all the blanks, right? And what I think could be some really good storytelling is leave some stuff to the imagination, right? So here we have Andor, season 1 and 2, filling in the blanks to Rogue One, which fills in the blanks leading up to Star Wars. So that could go horribly wrong. But in this case, I think it's gone horribly right. You know what I mean? Like, they haven't just unnecessarily written a bunch of backstory into a bunch of things for the sake of it. Like, you know, here's an alien that was on screen for 0.5 seconds, and now we're going to write a whole story about this person and their background and blah, 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 blah. So, like I said, that's been a thing that I've always been cautious about. But this is an example of how you do all of that correctly. You know what I mean? So Andor season 1 and 2 leading into Rogue One, which leads perfectly into A New Hope. Like, yeah, this is how you do it. So I've enjoyed everything. And I will say this, the one thing I didn't like about the episode 1 through 9 was it Bix? Is that Andor's girlfriend?
Yeah.
She's just like, oh, I've got to run off and you know, let you be in the rebellion and I'll be a distraction and I'm just going to exit stage right. To me, that felt like a cop out just so he could make googly eyes at Jyn Erso and Andor, even though they weren't really together or anything. But it, you know, you got that possibility of whatever. And then the button at the end where she's holding the baby, like. That it worked for me. Even that was the one nitpick takeaway I didn't like about episode 1 through 9. They brought it back in at the last episode with the final image. It worked. Like, I'm sold. So even that one nitpick paid off. That now, having seen the whole series, I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. So that was literally my only complaint, was how convenient it was just to have the love interest exit stage right. But they pulled that off well too. So, like I say, I'm you know, I cannot say enough good things about this slow burn storytelling and the maturity of it. And you know, I'm not sure there was a lightsaber in the whole thing, right? I mean, like, yeah, and we had one Force healer who doubted her own abilities. You know, she's like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it wasn't this, you know, the Force was akin to having faith, not what we've seen in a lot of these other movies where, you know, I'm juggling things with the Force and I'm moving things around, and you know, it's a very commonplace thing. So I kind of appreciated that. But yeah, 2 thumbs up. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hollywood, take notes. This is how you tell stories.
Yeah, that's. I agree with all of you. I had no complaints at all. I even liked the Bix thing. Mainly because I thought it made his story, and I'm not talking about just the button. The button, actually, I remember when I saw that at the end, I thought, man, what a way to, you know, stick the knife in and twist it and make it even more tragic and sad and all of that. And yeah. I know he said he wanted to make it hopeful, like there's, you know, something there to carry on Andor's legacy and so forth. But for me, it struck me as tragic, taking the tragedy to even a higher level. He didn't know he had a kid, never got to meet the kid, never got to interact with him, none of that. Never got to enjoy any part of life that way or feel that part of life, experience it. All of that taken from him so that he would sacrifice himself to do this thing that apparently the Force wanted him to do. The Force had a plan, as he was told, and he was to be in that specific spot at that specific time and all of that. And I thought Bix saying, I'm making the decision for both of us and leaving and all of that was very tragic, that he just so badly wanted to have this life. And now that too had been taken all along. These things in series had been taken from him again and again and again, forcing him to be in this one position, and just the tragedy of it. So when you thought of it, because Helena, I was explaining this to her, and she said, yeah, that's when I told her, they all die. She said, yeah, that is extremely sad. That's an extremely sad story. But it also makes his sacrifice all the more beautiful, that he gave up all that stuff, became the person he became, all the bad stuff, all the good stuff, so that this could be accomplished. And I thought that was a really beautiful part of it. What did you think of and by the way, did you know, because I wanted to talk about Luthen Rail, my favorite character of the whole series was Luthen Rail. I loved his character, loved how he was written, the storyline for the arc, all of that I thought was great. The airs he put on, I enjoyed him actually in his airs. I loved him. What was when Dedra showed up to the shop and he answered the door, and he immediately goes into his shopkeeper, socialite attitude and the smile, and it's so easygoing, and it's, please join us, and when he goes to shake her hand and he does it in the overhand way instead of to the side, and it's just it was so well done, so enjoyable. And the bit with him talking about only 2 questionable pieces in the entire gallery. Any guesses? And you know what it is, but I'm really enjoying his performance and how it's written. It could have been so rote, that you've seen that sort of thing play out numerous times in different, venues. But man, I really enjoyed watching him play that part. I really did. And I thought he played it so well in there. I enjoyed his character the most out of everyone in that entire series. But I was wondering, what for you guys, was there anyone that really spoke to you the most, or at any particular time? Like I felt, what is her name? Why am I blanking on it now? His adoptive daughter, Clea. I mean, she had a wonderful story as well, loved her character and all of that. So I was just wondering, did you have one that you really stood the most out to you, or anything that really spoke to you the most?
So going back to your take, I wanted to mention that I found the opposite with Andor. I didn't find it was tragic, but I found that he spent his whole life looking, he started out looking for his sister, and then he spent his whole life saving people. He even says at one point, I should stop saving people, but he can't. It's part of his nature. He's a protector at heart. So his sacrifice at the end was just so poignant because it made him an even greater hero. But like you said, Luthen Rail, yeah, he was my favorite. Just because he was completely unsung. No one in the galaxy knew what he gave up and how he sacrificed everything to give his daughter an opportunity to live free. Because that's basically what it was. Because he was involved in that massacre. I think it might have been on Mimban, but they were wearing mud trooper uniforms. But he's involved in that massacre, and he finally saw that this is the way this is going. This is going to continue. It's going to get worse. And I can do something about it. And the fact that he had the presence of mind to then form the entire Rebel Alliance, basically all on his own, working in isolation, unsung, unknown, and hated by his own rebels. They didn't like him because he was, he's too this or he's too that. But without him fanning the flames of those embers, the rebellion would have been snuffed out. Stellan Skarsgård's performance was just sublime. It was really, really
amazing. Yeah, amazing. And one of the things I thought was very interesting about that, he actually in real life, he suffered a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has difficulty remembering lines, and he has to have them fed in, through an earpiece and stuff. But even with that, and his passion for it still came through, and I think that speaks to his acting method. I think Brando was the same way. Brando had a horrible time remembering lines, but man, could he deliver on the emotion, and that's so important in what you're doing. And I think here it plays out to the same effect as with Brando, is that when you're given something so rich, and you're able to access those emotions, that emotional side to put into it, it really paid off. And he took it. He definitely took it seriously. He was amazing in that. Yeah. Kelly, what'd you think? Any particular character that
Stormtrooper
tickled your
number one.
fancy? Mm-hmm.
The way he emoted not being able to hit anything when he shot was no. I on the Stormtrooper thing, the thing that I thought was interesting to me was the one time the Stormtroopers could ever hit anything was when they lined the people up on the wall.
Yeah. At point blank.
Yeah, exactly. That stood out. But
Did you notice by the same token, that's what they did with the Jawas too in the original.
Yeah.
In Star Wars, when they line them, and only Imperial troopers are this accurate. Well, apparently when they line them up on
at
the wall,
3 feet away,
right.
No, it's like that upper crust twit of the year thing from Monty Python where they had the rabbit stick to the ground. But now Luthen Rails, I agree with you. I think Luthen was a great character, but frankly, I think through the whole thing, the thing that really, the thing that really got me to like the series was the fact that all the main characters, as you went along, they became deeper. There was more, like Rich was saying, there's more context to it. So I don't know, I don't know that there's one character that's disposable. Luthen was certainly sort of the glue that tied everything together, but they were all fascinating characters at the end. There's one I don't like, and that's what's his face from Alderaan. He could have not been in the whole thing, and it would have been
Benjamin
fine.
Bratt.
Yeah.
Bail Organa.
Bail Organa.
Yeah. Yeah.
But was there one you liked more than any of the others?
I thought the Mon Mothma character was fascinating. Mm-hmm. I think how that character developed, where it came from. I thought that was really interesting to me. But I will have to agree with you guys that I think Luthen Rail sort of carried it.
Well, not to take away from your comment about Mon Mothma, though. I mean, it would have been so easy to simply do that character in a very traditional kind of typecast way, and it wasn't. It was done very nuanced. It was done in a very torn
it's this gradual sort of descent from where you are into this sort of chaotic world of the rebellion, and you see, because Luthen, when you see that character, he's already made sacrifice. He's already given stuff up. With Mon Mothma, you see that take place over time. Yeah. Right, exactly.
To the point where she sells her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That kid had it coming.
No, well, but you get my meaning.
Yeah.
She didn't want her to
match made in heaven. They're going to live forever, happily ever after.
They didn't do what they normally do, which is she's the power suit girl boss, right? They did not do that. They've done that in almost all their other shows that have come out recently, and it doesn't land. This, she had vulnerability, she had strength, she had character, she had to make sacrifices. I mean, they made her the hero that she was.
Yeah, I mean, there was nobody as you went through the story who had there was nobody in the story as you went through that had their hands clean by the end. Everybody lost something. Some lost everything. Dedra ending up in a prison, building parts for a Death Star,
Such comeuppance. It was great.
Yeah.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And Cyril becoming, just absolutely disillusioned by the end, and just essentially not really knowing who to hate, and who to really fight against, and just being utterly confused and then dying. That's it was
and he had such control.
Yeah.
Right. He was this, fastidious, rule following, like his whole personality was one of order. Right. And I'm going after people who are violating the order, and, whether it's a security guard or whether it's at that info place, where he ended up in the cubicles and then he got promoted. Like, you could see that character progression, and then to see him lose that order and become filled with rage in those few scenes was awesome. It was powerful. It wasn't unexpected. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. They're really, really, leaning into his worldview is being shattered. And this is how he's going to handle it. Like, that was well done. In fact, I am with you guys on the Luthen character, but let's talk about the bad guys. Like, Deidre was great. This other guy was great. Who was the leader guy who ended up, no, not him. The guy that ended up eating his blaster before they took him off to be arrested. Like, Krennic doesn't count. He was a cameo. Like, I get it. He's from the movie. I'm talking about these three bad guys that were,
it began with a V. Oh, I can't remember his name. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I love his character.
Yeah, and he was in Game of Thrones, in the last season as the Maester, and what a great actor. And the way he's kind of running this room of intelligence agents, and they're looking for the rebels and doing it, like, his character was just great. And then the secret of the Death Star got out, and the repercussions are happening, and so you got to see how the Empire would even eat its own. Yeah, you know what I mean? And,
easily doing it.
Yes. Yeah. And here are these guys that are like, the secret police, and they're super powerful, and one ends up jail and the other one ends up eating his own blaster, and they used the boyfriend guy who got disillusioned, and all of these kind of machinations. Like, that was so well played. You know what I mean? This was a competent evil empire, and the bad guys were not these mustache twirling bad guys who, are for the sake of being bad or just going to go do all the bad things. Like, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? So, and I appreciated how well they were written, because you can't have really good guys unless you have some really good bad guys for them to play off of, right? And so this cat and mouse of, we're looking for Nexus. I think that's what they called Luthen's character, right?
Axis.
Okay. Like, he was right under their nose the whole time. He was, right around the corner. You've literally been in the same room with him at times. And you didn't know, like, Luthen wouldn't be as good a character if these guys weren't there trying to find him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
There was good interplay between the space Nazis and the Rebel Alliance. It was awesome.
Well, I mean,
the space Nazis and the space French.
Space Khmer Rouge.
Space French, yeah. I have to say two things. Your observation about the disillusionment of what's his name? Cyril. Yeah. The fact that he should have been the perfect Imperial. He was about order. He was about everything. But even he when he saw the hypocrisy, he saw that the order that they had was not real order. It was tyranny, right? And even he became disillusioned and started to rebel. And then, but like, I know you said it was just a cameo, Mark, but that interrogation scene between Deirdre and Krennic, where he sticks his finger on top of
dude, that was awesome.
It was so awesome.
Kelly can't wait to use that one,
because it was like, it was like, all I could think of was, it's like the Death Star hitting a planet. Like, he hit her right on top of the center of her head, and the look on her face, like,
that scene was so well done.
Oh, you missed if you're not a Rebel spy, you missed your calling. Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
There were things with the Cyril character and Dedra and how that all played out that actually reminded me of the movie Brazil. with how the bureaucracy played out in there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. I agree. I thought of that a few times as well. I don't think many people know that movie, but yeah, I think that was a perfect allegory for what was going on in so many ways. And at the end, as was mentioned, very Soviet, very German, that at the end everybody is blamed and everybody is essentially wiped out. And the guys on top thinking, well, we'll just shoot a couple troopers here and then we'll be able to wipe out the rest of the people because they don't matter and all that. Not quite realizing until it's too late that they are seen as nothing more than simple troopers as well, as expendable as anybody else, And yeah, it was so well done. And Dedra sitting there coming to that conclusion, sitting in prison, that was great. That was
on the floor.
Yeah, that was such a well-written arc too, man. It started out so weird with Cyril, stalking her and all that, and somehow it works out and they, become a couple, and then the power dynamic between them. And as uncomfortable as you feel with Cyril and his character stalking her in the first season, suddenly in the second season, you're more uncomfortable with her and more sympathetic towards him because of what he's being manipulated to do.
Yeah.
It's so well done.
Yeah, being used. He was the sympathy for the devil was done so well in that character, because you were never meant to like him, but at the end you started to sympathize with him because you knew he was bad, but he was being abused just like everyone else was,
Yeah.
And you start to sympathize with the guy that you should hate.
Yeah.
That's right. His mother was really the emperor.
Unbelievable.
In that dynamic.
Great performance by her too. She was
great. Yeah.
She was so terrible.
She reminded me of like a character out of an Albert Brooks movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and thinking about Andor, or rather Rogue One, when Grand Moff Tarkin's like, "Hey, this is great. This thing works. I'm going to take this over. This is mine now." Makes that scene kind of play like when you see the lengths that Krennic went to kind of get this built, and he's in charge of this, and like the secret's getting out, and now he's upset, and like this was his baby for right. You said 13 years or whatever. And then Grand Moff Tarkin's like, "Cool, nice new car. I think I'm going to take it for a spin," like I say, it made that hit a little harder, different, better, whatever you want to call it. So I enjoyed that. So
Krennic, So I did a little research, and he ended up killing Urso's family. Basically killing his family to get him to come work on the. But Krennic, that was his whole spoilers. Yeah. That was his whole life. That project, he sacrificed everything to do it. And again, he's a villain. We don't like him, but like you said, Mark.
Well, you like him as a villain.
Yeah. But Tarkin came in and just said, "Oh, you did a great job. I'm glad I did so well with this."
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna take my project now, and you could see why it just hits so much harder. Why he was so enraged in Rogue One. Now that you've seen this whole series of events that he went through to get there, it's like, oh, it's great.
Just for that one moment, that 10-second conversation, totally wipe out everything.
13 years of work, and killing and betrayal and murder and all sorts of other stuff. And a guy just comes in and says, "Yeah, you did a great job. I'm glad I thought of it."
Yeah.
Hey man, you're an intergalactic project manager. What'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but it goes back to what I was talking about before. With you got the soldier that you send into the square to get shot. You got the supervisor who's nothing more than a pawn in his own marriage, or his own relationship, whatever they were. And then her being a pawn to the director and his whole effort at the propaganda to get the stuff out of the soil, the mineral they needed, all the way up. Even Krennic, who's no more than a pawn, to his fascist authoritarian boss. And then Tarkin was nothing more than that, an afterthought to the Emperor, who was really only focused on Vader, in as much as Vader could get him Luke, you know? So it's just a series of that all the way up to the top, with everyone thinking. It was very paranoia, you know?
Yeah.
Right. But even the rebels were not above that. You know what I mean? That, you know, they had the one guy who was in that room with all the dudes in the white uniforms who, you know, sneaks out. He's like, oh, I used your code and I was, you know, poking around and I found out about, you know, the Death Star, and he tells Luthen, and, you know, it gets shot and left on a park bench. You know, thanks for the good work.
Which, by the way,
and then in Rogue One, they're like,
he couldn't steal.
Going into Rogue One, though, I'm like, we've got to kill Galen Erso. I'm like, the thing works. It's already been built. What do you know? It's not going to do a whole lot of good to kill him now, but that's a slight nitpick. You know, you should, where were you 13 years ago? But whatever.
Yeah, see if you can shoot him in. See if you can shoot him in the past.
Well,
have that hyper
right.
shot 13 years ago. Hit him in.
You see the difference between Krennic. So Krennic's opposite is really Luthen Rail, because you see they're both working on these projects and they both get them. Basically, Rail is never credited for what he did. Well, just like Krennic is never going to be credited for what he did, but you see the difference. Luthen was doing it for others. Krennic was doing it for himself. And you see how that led to the kind of, whereas Luthen's story was heroic, Krennic's story was just like, oh, he got exactly what he deserved when
well, you had the one who was perfectly willing to be selfless.
Yes.
To the point of stabbing himself in the heart.
Yeah.
You know, and then Krennic excuse me, and then Krennic, who is the absolute opposite of that, just selfish to the utmost degree, looking to sell anybody down the road to get his own glory, you know, and absolutely working out to the same effect, really, is what that was.
Unknown, unnamed, destroyed. But whereas one is an unknown hero, the other one is just a useless villain, you know, who ended up being actually at fault for the fall of
what?
all of the Roman Empire.
The fact that Krennic ended. If Krennic all of them hadn't done what they did, nothing would have worked out. There were so many small things that were important to get to the New Hope, and it was just, oh man.
But I love the maturity with which they handled all of those characters and their arcs as well. The Dedra's boss, I can't remember his name, but Veered, or I forget what his name was, but when he says, could I have a few moments
we'll call him Maester.
Maester, there you go. Could I have a few moments to collect my thoughts? You know, you know what he's going to do, you know it, and you're wondering, really the only question is, how's it actually going to play out? But the guy standing outside, all you hear is the muffled shot from inside, and he immediately raises his hand gently to tell the troopers, no, don't. It's all right. You know, I thought that was so well done. That was so, it seemed very pragmatic and realistic in many ways. You could see that happening. You know, there's
it's falling on your sword, right? You failed. You got to fall on your sword. This is the Star Wars version, or the Empire version of that. And I agree. It was so well played. Just that little, there was no words. There was no nothing. It was just put the hand up, you know, like, it's okay. We knew this was going to happen.
Right. Yeah. This was expected. You know, that was so well done. I love that scene. Yep. And I don't want to forget mentioning this. I loved K2 as well. I thought he was great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
His character.
And, well, let me go back to the Maester real quick. That guy didn't really deserve his fate.
No, not at all.
Doing a good job
the
whole time. You know what I mean? Like, this guy was competent. He was leading all these agents. Like, he did a great job objectively at what his job was, right? You know, it wasn't like he failed so miserably, you know, and you're like, oh no, you know, but circumstances were what circumstances ended up being, and that was
it shows one
fate. You know what I mean?
It shows one of the greatest failings of that particular type of government is that it's so not just unforgiving. Unforgiving implies that there was an actual wrong. I don't think the guy actually committed a wrong. He was actually very, as you said, very competent at what he did. Circumstances are circumstances. Sometimes you take an L, but if you destroy your greatest tool because your work didn't work out, then you've done nothing but hamper yourself going forward because you have lesser tools to try to do the same or better with going forward.
Yeah, who's going to take his place that's going to do a better job?
Right, exactly. So you wound your own effort by, doing this nonsensical punishment for something that didn't need to be punished.
Which goes to the audio that he was listening to when the guy walked in, which was that monologue from the first one about how, the Empire is brittle and everything we do chips away at their power and their authority and their influence, and including which was just about to happen. Like there was subtext in there, and it was beautifully shot and well done. And in lesser hands, there'd have been some monologue or some stupid thing to beat us over the head with a 2x4 about the real message or something.
Yeah, he would have been the one to deliver the speech rather than just listening to it.
The interesting thing, an interesting side note to that is, so many people think of Marvel and Star Wars as very much the same level of entertainment value. In other words, kind of popcorn, surface level, that kind of thing. We know, because we've been steeped in those two universes for forever, that really well done stories can be told. But it's difficult to get that acknowledgement, to get that idea realized, to have that sort of thing happen. It's very rare, And with Star Wars, it's been especially so. You have moments in Marvel or comics, let's say, where you have these really grand stories that are so well told, and moments, lightning in a bottle moments, most of them by the likes of Alan Moore, that kind of thing. But it's spawned others, so that you have Powers and, all these different ones that are written so much better than the pop 60s era kind of story, the Stan Lee era kind of stories.
Excelsior. His name was Leo Partagaz. Partagaz was his name.
Oh, okay. There you go. Partagaz. Yeah. And
is that the actor's name or the
character's name?
Character. Okay.
And that's right. Because Director Krennic said, "I don't think I can protect you this time, Leo." But this was the first time, barring the stuff that we've had with the old Republic cinematics and such, but an actual completed project, beginning to end arc, where Star Wars has had that attention, and you really have a realized potential for what can be done in that universe.
Well, it goes back to what Mark said, was that, this idea that they're not beating you over the head with something. I mean, the moments when you watch Andor where you're thinking, oh, they're just checking a box, are minimal, right? Mm-hmm. Along the whole way, they're letting it be what it needs to be. I mean, the line between hero and villain is really thin at times. And I mean, everybody's got dirt on them, nobody's coming out of this clean. There's sacrifice all around, and everybody's getting used by somebody else, right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's how this would actually sort of play out, right? We're not trying to make it clean and happy. There's not a happy ending. It's the story is just the story, and you let it stand on its own.
It passes the smell test, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
They gave the respect to the property. This is what it looks like when you respect the IP.
I would say even more than the creator himself.
Yeah.
Lucas may have at times wanted to achieve something of this level.
Yeah.
But he was not adept at it. And,
oh God, no.
And even though he tried and had moments that were closer than others and that kind of thing, This had never been broached before because everybody else kind of glommed on to the childlike aspects
No
of
squeezy.
Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody needed to poke their gloved finger into the top of his head, and yeah. No, I mean, Lucas was a goofball, man, and
Yeah.
this is what I agree. This is what you want. I mean, this is even better in a lot of ways than some of those stories that have been told before that we all like. It takes it deeper. It makes
Oh, I
something out of
agree.
it.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think, as a matter of fact, Luke, as I've said this before, Lucas was good at making a sandbox, and that's it. And when he tried to actually build his little sand castle inside his sandbox, he wasn't really much of an artist. He was good at making, that box and kind of leaving it up to others to fill in bits and pieces and stuff like that. But the more architecture he had control over, the easier it fell apart, you know? And I think that was the downfall of it, to the point that where Disney took that and the absolute worst aspects of the Star Wars universe and dumbed it down even further, thinking, well, this will just be a moneymaker. We can just roll this same thing out over and over and over and over again. And here, Tony Gilroy, through happenstance, a fluke of destiny, ends up getting in there and making that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And really brings out of this what all of us, I think, were really hoping for. All this backstory and richness and what can be realized with characters and the drama that's inherent to this in a way that I believe no one ever would have thought. So if you look at
But
like Ang Lee, I'm sorry, forgive me. I just want to make this one point and then I'll stop. So Ang Lee, who I loved Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and all that, and he's a good director and all that sort of thing, went at Marvel with the idea, I'm going to make this fast food into fine dining kind of stuff. But it was from a very pompous and pretentious aspect and did not come across well. Became this very disjointed, weird, kind of psychedelic in a way, kind of outing into the Marvel universe that was totally off base. For some reason, Tony Gilroy, who was not a Star Wars fan, didn't know anything about Star Wars and all that, man, he got in there and just absolutely killed it. And it was just, when you have the two as a comparison, it was just amazing. Just amazing. Yeah. What were you going to say, Kelly? My apologies. Kelly.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that I largely agree with you. But there's this idea that they're not tied to the happy ending, right? I remember a friend of mine went and saw Rogue One, and she said she hated it. And I was like, "Why did you hate that?" She's like, "They all die in the end." And I was like, "Well, that's wonderful. That's how that story should go."
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's the thing that hinders this a lot. And we've talked about it a lot, is that there's that idea that you need the sweet rainbow end because that's what puts butts in seats and things like that. But I hope what people notice from this is that you can tell a very mature story, and it can take whatever arc it takes, and it doesn't have to end on that really glorious, here's the happy end, we're all walking on a beach with poodles moment, where we can just be real about it. And
we're all getting a medal from Princess Leia.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Chewbacca. Poor Chewbacca.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you saw little bits. I mean, you had to put the little cutesy droids in there and stuff like that, but the story was still the story, and I think it's just, seriously, I give it, it's amazing. They need more of it. They need more of it.
Even that other droid from season 1.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to call him the comic relief, but he wasn't overly funny.
No.
And the fact that he's like, hey, when's Andor coming back? You got this sense of a puppy whose master is never going to come home.
Yeah.
And is that a main aspect of the story? No, but like, that's a droid that is a character, right? That we care about, and then, K2SO was a very small part of it, but I love that he got to be integral into this extraction from Coruscant, Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, hey, did we call this droid going? And he's just like, messing them up. And so then him coming into Rogue One, you're like, clearly there's a backstory there. We just don't know what it is. Well, now we do know what it is. Mm-hmm. And that was just great. You know what I mean? And
the moment he used that guy as the body shield, that was
great.
That was hilarious.
That Supervisor Hart.
Yeah. The fact that he was so, he thought he was all that in a slice of cake too, and he ends up being just totally degraded, being used as nothing more than a shield for blaster bolts for a robot.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that first guy, Alan Tudyk, is such a good voice actor, man. He really is. When the guy said, "Are you here?" What did that guy say? He said, "Are you here?
Like, did we call you
with us?" He said, "Are you with us?"
Yeah.
No. Knocks him off the bridge.
And you saw the thing I sent to all you guys that he improvised that line at the end.
The one about he had to.
Awesome. That Cassian said I had to.
Awesome. So I thought that was cool. Yeah. I always find that the mark of a good director.
Leave that in. Yeah,
man.
Well, and that's the thing about filmmaking in general, right? Somebody wrote the screenplay, but you got to give it to the actors, you got to give it to the director. So there's the film you write, there's the film you film, and then there's the film you edit. You know what I mean? These are in many cases, three very different things, and so you got to have room for the actors to act, right? Would Luthen's character have been as good as we'd like without Stellan Skarsgård?
Right.
Put someone else in there. Maybe it would be great if Gary Oldman was there, right? I'm sure he would knock it out of the park. Or you could hire the director's girlfriend, like happened in The Acolyte, and that's where we end up. You know what I'm saying? And then in the editing, let's be honest, Star Wars was saved in the editing. Mm-hmm. Right? Lucas is like, hey guys, check out my movie, and all his director friends, they're like, ooh, this needs a little bit of help. And they cut out a bunch of scenes and move some things around, and that's how we ended up with Star Wars. Had we gone with the original cut, so to speak, that Lucas had come up with in the beginning, I don't know that Star Wars would be Star Wars. It'd be some forgotten 1970s sci-fi thing that didn't really go anywhere.
Like Flash Gordon.
Stars.
Flash Gordon,
God, Flash Gordon.
Yeah, or Krull. I know that's fantasy, but you know what I'm saying, like. They were fine, but they were not Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
I have to mention they, a lot of these properties, they spend a lot of money on special effects and stuff. The effects in this were so well done, and everything made sense. Unlike like in the Obi-Wan series where they had the security gate that they could have just walked around. This or none of that. It's like,
stymied by moving left or right.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, but here everything looked it looked as good as Rogue One, which is a major production.
Yeah.
To that point, Rich, there were points in this where I saw, you could tell they were operating on a budget because you can only have so many people and that kind of. But I fully agree with you. Is that even in those moments where you could tell that there was a restriction on what you had the ability to pull off, they still found a way to hit it out of the park. It was still something where you were riveted by whatever was going on.
That's the thing. You're so willing to let it go. It's like when you go to watch a play on Broadway or something. I've not seen many, but I've seen a few. Enough to know they don't have the budget of a major motion picture and they don't have CGI. But if it's well done, you really don't care that it's a bunch of cardboard and nonsense up there. You're willing to let it go for the emotional impact, the story that's being told. And I think that to your point, Kelly, that really comes across.
And that's where I'm really critical as somebody who watches some of these things, is that when you do have a budget and you tell a dumbass story, then I'm offended. Right?
Yeah.
When you don't have a budget, but you really bring the story content, then you can suspend disbelief and just let yourself go into it. Yeah.
It's what they did in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian that they lost in the third. The first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian were great because not only was the story good, but the effects and everything were sensible and well done, and they cared about it. And you could see, like, even we would see all this, like, there was a coffee cup in the scene that they removed digitally later, right? but stuff like that all the stuff that they put in The Mandalorian in the first 2 seasons that was good, it all meshed together because you could tell everyone was happy and excited to be working on that project. And that's how this felt. The actors were into it. It looked like all the production people were into it. The effects people were into it. There was none of that kind of slap.
Exactly. None of that slap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were all held to a higher standard. It looked like they were all saying, "Oh, this is going to be great if we make it great."
Well, and they also filmed in some real locations,
Yeah.
as opposed to doing all things on the volume or a lot of green screen things.
Yeah.
Like
Did they really go to Foreman?
the whole Senate thing was actually, I think, a building in Australia. Some big art center in Australia with some amazing architecture. Right. And there's a difference between that and was it the Acolyte where they had to like go to another galaxy and all the stormtroopers were there and they had the tape all over their uniforms. Which one was that?
Ahsoka?
That was Ahsoka, right? You could tell parts of that were just filmed on the volume. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like it looked like this cool background, but you could tell they weren't there.
Right.
You know what I mean? The depth wasn't there, and and the volume is great. I love it, and you could do some really amazing things with it. So I'm not poo-pooing the whole technology, but I remember like they're on that plateau. It's like high up in the thing, and the Star Destroyer is like hovering right above it, and you could see all the way across, into the ship or whatever. And it was no. I'm still talking about Shoka. Okay. And like. It looked cool, and I know I was supposed to be able to see all the way across the way into this ship. It just wasn't real, and I could tell it wasn't real. You know what I mean? Like the technology was great, but it was just like, okay, they're clearly in the volume, and we're going to see a lightsaber fight, and paint by numbers. That was not what I saw in Andor at all.
You know what I think part of it is that, like we were talking about, you weren't truly invested in that story. You weren't invested in it, and so you're sitting there looking around, and you're evaluating all that other stuff because really you're not quite into it. You're a little bit maybe bored or just like, okay, when are we going to get to the saber fight? Show me something cool finally, will you? And in Andor, in Andor, you didn't have that. You didn't have those moments where you were really
right. But even on Andor, when they're on that agricultural planet. Right. And they've got these big sci-fi grain silos. Those are cool. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, okay. Like that's what a big grain silo would look like on a sci-fi planet like that. And clearly that was CGI. That was not a real.
And I don't mean to take away from the artistic side of it at all. But what I mean is that if it didn't have the story it had, I don't think any of that stuff would have worked. I think you're willing on a subconscious level to just forgive that stuff. Because you really are in it and you're along for the ride,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's all suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah.
When I'm going into these movies, I'm not looking for hyper realistic everything and like if it, like I want to be entertained. Show me a good time, and if you keep pulling me out of it with bad writing, bad story, bad acting, bad, or a ham-fisted message that gets in the way of my good time, right? I'm like, come on, guys, just entertain me. And Andor was entertaining. Like I'm literally talking to my wife and like, we've got to go watch Andor. She hasn't really watched it. I was like, we got to start over. Season 1, season 2, Rogue One. Like let's go. I'm ready for it. Like
actually, I'd show her. I'd do it the same way we saw it. I'd show her Rogue One first, and then show her Andor because
think so?
I do, because man, you're thinking about, for me anyway, you're thinking about Rogue One and you're thinking about, oh my God, all the stuff that was really tragic.
And you know what? Thinking about it in a different context, I would want to watch Breaking Bad first and then go watch Better Call Saul, even though chronologically Better Call Saul is first. You're going to miss all of those callbacks and all of those things that they're setting up if you haven't seen the original. So you've convinced me. We're going to watch Rogue One first.
Watch Rogue One first and then watch all 3 in succession and see if the opinion changes once Rogue One's watched that second time. It's like, okay, now we're going to watch this again and how much more tragic it all is,
Right.
I think that would go really well.
And this is done so well compared to like Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was an attempt to do this exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give Obi-Wan this prequel and like what was happening between these movies and Star Wars and
I screw it
cool.
all up.
Yeah, here's how not to do it versus here's how to do it.
The whole kidnapping scene in Obi-Wan.
The fact that you even had Leia in there is just dumb.
A crew of
years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars and then saved me from those kidnappers that one time. But now we need you. Come on, cut
everything.
That cadre of space pirates out there trying to catch her in the woods.
Ever.
Yeah,
so fast. So
getting caught up
in this universe, they have blasters that you can set to stun, right? I mean, imagine how different our world would be if we had guns that just stunned people.
Yeah,
I mean that really worked.
We saw.
I mean, that'd be so fun. Pew, 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 pew.
We saw it in Andor with the stun grenade that they threw into the room. I mean,
the flashbang,
yeah, it was a stun grenade. Yeah,
that really messed that girl up, though. She was out of it for like the whole rest of the series. Like, oh, I'm wandering around in the woods. What's going on?
One thing that's cool about it is those troops that did that. Those were Imperial SWAT. That was an Imperial SWAT team, basically. And
was.
It was. Yeah, well, it was. Yeah.
I have a.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rich. Finish your point.
No. I was saying those apparently are those troops were the kind of people that you would normally interact with. The stormtroopers were elites. We see them everywhere, but the stormtroopers aren't the common troop. Those guys were the common troop.
Yeah. I don't think you interacted with stormtroopers too much because most of them were dead.
Crushed. What are you going to say, Kelly?
No,
it seems like that armor focused whatever shot winged you into your heart.
Bouncing around inside your armor.
That's my
the bolt can go in, but it can't escape.
Just a bunch of slime inside the armor.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
No, that was the point that I was going to bring up. Is like I don't understand the point of any of the body armor whatsoever because it didn't do a damn thing to anybody. I mean, if you had that on, you were sure to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only person it protected was K2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because holding the dude up somehow, then it worked, but
because it had that plastic and then the whole body to get through.
That's the thing. It passes right through the armor itself, but the design flaw
I don't understand blaster
is that the blaster bolt is stopped by about an inch of just human flesh.
Yeah, but blaster bolts don't really seem to behave the same way all the time.
No.
It's like you're right. The stormtrooper armor sucks. It doesn't protect them from anything. I mean, every time.
But it looks cool.
And what's funny is K2 didn't need to do that because he had been walking up just getting shot and nothing happened anyway.
Yeah.
So I think he was doing it just to troll them.
Yep. Like, oh, look at this. Here's what I think of you.
Stop shooting yourself. Stop shooting yourself.
Forcing them to shoot the corpse of their commander. I mean, excellent. And it was so in K2's it's so in K2's personality. He's just such a jerk. And it's awesome.
I really hope that Tony Gilroy, I know he said maybe someday he'll return to the Star Wars universe. Man, I would love to see, he'd have to be comfortable with it, of course, but I'd love to see him do an actual Force user, Jedi, Sith, or whatever story.
What if we had this level of storytelling?
Just so that we could have
Jedi.
Yeah, just so that we could have that kind of story there. That, oh my goodness, then I could die a happy man. We've got this as proof of concept. I would love to have that, but even if we don't, that's okay, as long as we've got this.
I hope he leaves it alone. I hope he says, I've made my mark. It's awesome, and it's just like Breaking Bad, or what's the gangster show?
Godfather.
No. The TV show.
The Sopranos.
Goodfellas.
No, the one I never watched. The one with the mob family. It's
the
Sopranos.
Sopranos. Yes, Sopranos. Thank you. Yeah, Sopranos.
Said that 3 times.
I was trying to come up with the name of the one that what's his face? Batman.
The Simpsons.
Oh, the Penguin?
Family Guy.
No.
Oh, the Penguin. That was really good.
Remember the one that What's his name? The actor who played Batman in the Tim Burton movie.
Adam West.
Mike. No, that was Michael Keaton.
Michael
right?
Keaton.
Yeah.
Remember, he was in the gangster movie.
Yeah, Johnny Dangerously.
That's it. I was trying to think of that one to throw that out.
And I'm the Pope.
Damn it, that would have been such a good one.
Great film too. But no, excellent. Yes, Johnny Dangerously. I just actually watched that Dom DeLuise clip with him being the Pope because the new Pope. They're bringing it up now. Hilarious. But yeah,
Dom DeLuise was. Yeah, he was
great.
So
but this, man, what a way to stick the landing. You talk about a superhero landing. This was it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I can't wait for his next outing. Whatever he creates, I'm going to go see it just because,
Yeah.
And even if it's something that I don't like, I'm still going to support him just because, this is so rare. Take as many swings as you like, my friend.
I will say Tony Gilroy saved Star Wars. He saved it. It was dead.
Well, he gave it an epitaph that cannot be taken away.
He's fought a valiant holding action at best. Like he's got a lot. If you take Star Wars as a whole, there's a lot more losses than there are wins at this point.
The thing that'll give us a clues to what's going to happen next is going to be the mall show.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the thing, and I'm hopeful. It's got Sam Witwer, and they apparently allowed him to come up with some ideas and stuff that he's wanted to do for a while, and all of that. So that'll give us an inkling as to what Disney is really willing to do and allow to happen, and we'll see. We'll see from there.
They'll take this critical acclaim and say, "Oh well, this is good. Then we just need more of it, and it needs to be more in line with our message." And they'll just, how they're going to go. You know how they do. They get more something good, and then they say, "Well, if we just need more of it," and then they end up, turning it into mush. Yeah. But we have this, and they can't take it away from us. I've got
they can't.
Got it right behind
they can't take it away.
On 4K. I'll have the second.
Watch tomorrow. They'll take it down, and it'll never be seen.
I've got it. I will get it. I will get a bootleg on 4K if I have to. But I'll get it
released periodically on VHS.
I don't care. I got one of those too.
That's right. Oh no, Disney's been breached. Hackers have deleted all footage.
I'll buy the damn thing on Laserdisc if I have to.
We'll get in my backyard and remake a shot for shot. Just like camcorder.
All right.
Excellent.
All right, boys. Well, thank you very much. It's always an enjoyable show. I appreciate you taking the time. And it's nice, man, getting together and talking about one that you like,
Yeah.
Where you just don't have any complaints.
I do that every week. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
I love it all.
Yeah, Mark.
It was a great movie. It was a tour de force.
Michael Bay. Wow.
Oh.
I love explosions so much.
Michael Bay. Dinosaurs are really cool.
All right, boys. Until next time. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. I'll see you then.
Bye.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.